All right, I am rolling.
All right, I am too. I'm right behind you here. Hang on. Pittsburgh.
10-4, 10-4. How's my noise level?
You got to talk more than that. Yeah, it's fine. We've been talking this whole time.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, I'm ready when you are, man. Bring us in.
Three, 2.
Hey, welcome into the podcast here. I'm Jay, and that's Keith. How's it going, Keith? Oh, duck. Oh, man. Did I get you?
I think you missed. It's going well. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's, weather's getting good, conducive to, walk around the homestead and see if I need to do any extra work on my little bit of time off that I have. We'll get into that.
You got those stay off my lawns signs out?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Just freshly seeded. Yeah, exactly.
A picture of they always do the ones with the dog pooping and there's the slash through it and it's like whatever. Like
yeah.
I would probably get in trouble for this, but I'd just post a picture of a shotgun.
Yeah, there you go, man. Silhouette of a guy like this.
Right. Just a silhouette of a guy loading.
Right on.
Pump
right
action.
On. Yeah. 'Tis that time of year, man, to keep people off your lawn, man. You put a lot of money and you put a lot of time into it, and that's just God. I wish I had the dollars in an account somewhere, with all the money I've spent over the years, and you and I have had the conversation where we've mutually paid for the same service provider on certain things to have done to your lawn.
Yeah.
Without any good luck. So
I'm going it alone. I will tell. So we were just talking about this before we started, and so I'm a little league coach, and if you can come up with a way to mass. Really, it's going to be a marketing endeavor, I think, more than anything. Because this stuff already exists. They make some. Mm-hmm. But people aren't aware of it. And it's just mind-boggling to me that they're not. So, sprinkler systems. A lot of people have them. A lot of municipalities have them. Okay?
Right.
If you live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of pets that are making their rounds, a lot of times that'll burn your grass. And a good way to kind of neutralize that is just a sprinkler system, right?
Right.
It is amazing to me, Jay, how no one will incorporate the use of rain sensing equipment into their sprinkler system. If it's gonna rain or it just rained a couple inches, you don't want, and especially when I think about the city, it's raining, and I drive past some city park and the sprinklers are on, and I'm like, well, that's not free, that's
not very smart.
Taxpayer.
Yeah.
So, and this is the perfect example of this is, so we had a rainy weekend. I don't know how much we got, but we got a pretty good amount. And we had a couple baseball games that got rained out over the weekend. So we had a game on Tuesday last night, and it had been sunny for a day and a half, but they have these tarps that they put over the pitcher's mound, and they just leave them over it. So we pulled the tarp off today, and it's soaking wet underneath it, right? So I send a message to the league at the end of the game, and I say, heads up, I'm going to leave the tarp off tonight so it can dry out in the sun tomorrow. Check the forecast. There's no, rain coming. And the guy freaks out, and he goes, no, please don't. We'll get in big trouble. The sprinklers kick on at, midnight or whatever, and it'll ruin the mound. You got to cover it back up. Go back and cover it back up. And I'm thinking, okay. It is so squishy right now when I walk in the grass. Why
wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you mean too, because you can overwater that stuff, man, and really ruin, and it causes disease and mold. And, And so you're right.
So you come up with a sprinkler. You come up with something that you can attach to these sprinkler systems. And the old way they did it was, there was literally a water, it would fill up a little cup or a bowl, and when water was sitting in it, it would, stop
All
the.
you got to do is just have it. It should be. I mean, I've got a weather station on my counter in there.
Yeah, you got.
Why can't you just
you got
incorporate
internet
that
forecast now that'll tell you it's going to start raining in 5 minutes, right? Just incorporate that into your
barometric pressure or whatever, forecast or well, you got apps. What if you're at you're
Sure.
Of course it wouldn't.
Well,
I'm thinking typically it's early morning hours and you're going to be at home.
The newer
when you should be watering anyway.
The traditional sprinkler systems were mechanical, right? Like they had the old school timer and all that. The newer ones now, they're doing a lot of like electronic, like it's internet. You can like I've got one at home. I can literally pull open my app.
It's part of the home system. Everything like we were talking about in a previous podcast with the lights, and you can.
Why not put a little weather check in there? Right?
They can.
For. Yeah, well, some of them do.
They can.
Some of them do. So, just food for thought. But if you come up with a good way to mass market that and make people aware of it, there's your next financial windfall.
Oh, and then we'll get to continue to do Parts Counter Gurus forever.
Well, secretly, I've always wanted to turn this into a, lawn. Like I keep asking for people to write in and let's talk lawn tips or whatever.
Nice. Well, why not, man?
Right. Yeah,
they have most mowers have little engines, and then some go way up to diesel. So it's really all it's an internal combustion engine. So it's all why not, right? It's kind of part of what we do and what we're here about. So
that's right.
So why don't you hit the
what?
Why don't you hit the live from Parts Counter Guru?
Was that it? Is that what you were waiting on?
It made my day, man. Yeah. So while we're on the subject of talking yards and everything, man, I think it's important. In case you haven't figured it out today, folks, we're going to be discussing a little bit about lawn maintenance and the equipment that you so desire to go out and spend your life savings on to make that thing win a trophy in your neighborhood every year. But with this season coming on, something I didn't think about until I ran across the article was that if you live in an area, rural area, say outside of city limits where there's a lot more wildlife population, such as deer and skunks and all that sort of stuff. I didn't realize it, but it makes complete sense that if you see a lot of deer feeding in your yard most of the time, a lot, and it's not uncommon, you should be very careful of ticks, because that's an indication you're gonna have the extra ticks around. And as we know, that Lyme disease is not a fun thing to have to go through. As a matter of fact, my dad, our number one fan, actually contracted it a couple years ago, and it knocked him down pretty good. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up as the first lead-off piece of information, because they're saying that the highest activity should be through the end of this month. Continental USA is listed for high activity through May 15th, except for 3 states, California, Oregon, and Washington.
Which I would guess would be a little later.
Right, absolutely. As with anything in that part of the world, the springs come a little later and everything else comes a little later. But
and I've used this stuff and it works pretty well. They make it's like you spread it like you do your fertilizer. If you're doing your own lawn fertilization, you do the bag stuff, the granules.
Yep.
They make a deterrent, and it's not just for ticks, although ticks are one of the major pests that they you usually see on the bag. But it'll take care of like I do it for like grub control, stuff like that, like invasive lawn pests. But you put it down every season, so usually twice in the warm months, once in the spring and once like late summer. And it does a really good job of keeping ticks and a lot of these pests out. And you got to look at it like this. Like So moles can be if you've got a lot of grubs and you've got a damp lawn, if you irrigate, you're going to probably get moles because they're feeding on what's under your lawn, usually grubs.
That's exactly right.
So you get rid of the grubs, you eliminate the food source, right? So all this stuff is you're just pushing, it's the path of least resistance for a lot of these pests. They're going to go where the getting is good. So if you've got control down to sort of make the soil bitter for them, they're going to run to your neighbor's yard. Problem solved, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally how it works. So you just keep pushing. They're going to go where the food is good.
Yeah, and if you see somebody out at night, man, with a blower trying to get rid of those things, man, you know what's going on. So
yeah, right.
But yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up first to lead off, since we're on the subject of lawns and stuff. You got to be very careful, and
that's interesting.
I mean, I honestly, when I was working the yard, I'm very fortunate these days, Keith, as you well know. I pay people to do it as part of my homeowners association. I don't have to mow lawns anymore. I'm in a condo, so that's a wonderful thing for me. As you get older, things start hurting more at the end of the day when you work out in the yard all day. I used to love it. It was my come down to earth and mellow out mode.
That's good beer drinking time.
Summer. Oh, I just like to watch the the what do they call them, rainbirds? Yeah, those sprinklers. Just sit there and watch those things and drink a beer, drink a cold one.
So you posted something here in a news article that I was very curious about for a couple reasons. Let's see, where did you find this? This is from motor1.com. Ford dials down V8 F-150 production amid weak demand. This is fascinating.
Yeah, it is, and it is, but it's the growing trend of downsizing.
So previously on this podcast, we've had this discussion where you've brought up the growing popularity of sort of smaller pickups, and and my response was almost disbelief. I was like, what, who would want that? And I still sort of think, as a guy that owns an F-250, like if I buy a truck, it needs to be able to tow stuff and haul stuff and be a truck. Like, this is sort of the purpose of a truck. And it's fascinating to me that not everybody agrees with that. Like this just supports your theory, Jay, that people are drawn to basically a truck in body, but maybe not in engine or size.
Right. I mean, obviously you have your hardcore truck people that use it for what it was. Let's face it, a pickup truck these days. Look, when Lincoln comes out with one, come on. I mean, really, that's you. I mean, you're badging it for purposes. I get it, and you're marketing to, a more higher income bracket of people, I think. But what are you truly using that thing for? Every one I've ever seen, the pickup trucks are in immaculate condition. They're not dirty. But the ones that really get used, man, they'll have the long scratches down the side. They've got, just dings in the top of the tailgate. And, so those are the guys using those trucks.
We have probably read separately. I don't know that we've discussed this on the podcast, but it is widely known, and I think we both know this, that trucks are the most profitable vehicles produced by most of the major car manufacturers. In other words, of Chrysler's profit margins, their biggest profit margin is probably the Ram line. Ford has openly admitted that in the past, that their F-Series trucks are by far more, their profit margins are way wider than they are on their car line, which is part of the reason to get rid of cars.
Exactly.
And so that's not uncommon. I think that this whole truck, trucks are now between $50,000 and $100,000 depending on what you get, right? Like if you get a 3/4 ton, or a 1 ton, you're getting pretty
and
close to 100,000.
Right, and if you're going from a normal gasoline
with
engine to even a diesel,
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, you can get an F350 or a 450, 50 to 75,000 starting, but it's it's pricey. Well,
let's face it,
it's just gotten ridiculous. Like, people are going, well, come on, man, a truck for $75,000, really?
Mm-hmm.
A pickup truck,
right. Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. And you look at the tailgate designs, and we could do a whole podcast on what they're doing with tailgates these days. We've talked about that in the past, and I saw a guy locally doing a real quick radio spot for one of the Chevrolet dealerships, and they've got the hand sensor. You've got the button you mash to lower it, and the button to mash for it to come back up and close. And now you've got the ones that have seven features where they drop down, and you can use it as a step to get into the back end of the rig. I mean, they are going to extremes on these vehicles, but I found it very interesting because I'm used to the world, and when it came to Ford, you had your 4.6s and your 5.4s.
Yeah.
The Triton series of motors.
Yeah. Well, I've got a V10.
And so and Triton. that's a great workhorse.
I've owned a 4.7 and a 5.4, and they've since retooled those engine sizes. But so maybe this is literally a cost issue. People are not buying the more expensive ones because the ones with the bigger engines are the most expensive of that whole model. And they're now trying to accommodate.
How do you grow your?
You sell them a cheaper truck by giving them a cheaper engine. I mean, directly, right? So from your article here, currently the Ford F-150 is being offered in 5 engine variants, which include the 2.7, 3.3, 3.5, and 5.0 liter gasoline mills, and a diesel power plant.
Right.
The 5.0 liter V8 suffered a huge deal of demand decrease. And as someone that has owned the bigger V8 and the smaller V8, a couple of years apart, I can tell you that the bigger V8 got better gas mileage because it didn't have to work as hard.
That's exactly right.
So,
and early on with the 2.0 liter that the 2.0 liter they were putting in, it was a little EcoBoost.
Yeah.
In some of these, and it was a little too undersized for it, and they figured it out. And plus, the way it was mounted, they were having some difficulty with clearances, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And they were jacking off parts underneath, and they had to go back and rethink this thing. But from a cost-effective standpoint, you look at what they're doing. I mean, even the Mustang, okay, the engine sizes have gotten a little smaller.
I have a Mustang, but it's like
exactly. People are more interested
on the outside. Right.
Right. Exactly. But the thing that I saw, what interested me the most, and I get it with what they're doing, because the 2.7, the 3.3, and the 3.5 are all longitudinal versions of the transverse versions, which are in your Ford Edges and your Mustangs and your passenger cars or your SUVs.
Well,
so what does that do for a manufacturer? It reduces cost across the board, because then you're dealing with light components, like engine platforms that you don't really have to set aside a specific plant just for the Ford F-150.
And although they do sell a lot of those 4 engines, 4 different engines in the same F-150 is probably a bit much. Now, I haven't looked at what their towing capacities are lately, but I would say, I'd be all right with, because usually if you're going to get into a lot of towing, you that's a half ton, right? So you're going to go up to a 3/4 ton or a 1 ton if you get into in the Ford. Okay, so let's just lay this out. So the half ton GM is their 1500.
Right.
Ford is the F-150. Ram is the Ram 1500. And Toyota and Nissan, I think, only make half tons, if I'm not mistaken. So the Titan and the Tundra. Now they have a max version or whatever, but it's still just a half ton. As far as I know, a half ton pickup.
Which is funny. They went the other way on the engine displacements.
Right.
They're going bigger.
Well, that's because they're trying to appeal to guys like me with what I just said, which is I need something that can tow.
That's exactly right.
All right.
And the people that that are towing regularly, that are looking for something that tows and is not going to let them down on a long haul.
Right.
Those are the folks that are buying the diesels.
Right.
And
Well,
the larger displays, because obviously
or the gas,
and
the bigger gas engines, which
that's right.
I'm not going to tow an RV with a 2 point let's see, what was it here?
2.7 liter.
Yeah. Or
even
even
think about
I
it.
wouldn't even go 3.5. Like if I saw that and said I'm going to tow, because some of these smaller RVs, which we talked a lot about RVs in a. Was that a previous podcast? I get all confused with these time machine things going on, right? We got black holes and.
It was a week or two ago, I think. 3 weeks ago, we released that. Yeah.
So, we talked about RVs, and like a lot of these RVs are advertised as half-ton towable, right? Well,
that's right.
Half-ton, but which half-ton, right? Like,
right.
I'm not going to tow that with a 2.7 liter, if it's 8,000 pounds.
Right. And I know most of you are, that are listening or watching already know this, but I'll bring it up anyway, just from a perspective standpoint. The Hyundai Sonata, the Hyundai Tucson, that smaller SUV, the engine displacement on those are 2.0 liter and 2.4 liter, and this is a 2.7 liter. You're only talking 0.3 liters larger for the smallest platform on these F-150s. I wouldn't touch a 2.7 liter, but you know what? Give it to Ford. To go out and market these things and try to move more trucks. It's been the best selling thing for Ford for decades, man.
And I know I can hear, and you started to go there a while ago, which is, yeah, but they can get so much more power out of these now in the smaller engines than they could in previous years. True, but it's working harder, and you're going to literally work that thing to death if you're trying to tow something with it.
That's right.
So you're working it way too hard.
Engines.
Yeah.
Well, the other side of that is they're turbocharged, they're direct injected. There's a lot of other factors involved, for as far as wear and tear on.
Sure.
You need to take that into consideration before you purchase, one of these larger vehicles. If it's a F-150, I'm really sad to see them do this, but if you want a real truck, you better go with a larger displacement gas engine like a 5.4 or step into the diesel world and be done with it. Don't you agree?
I do. I have less faith in the diesels these days with all the reclamation stuff going on. It causes a tremendous amount of horsepower. But, I mean, if you're willing to get under the hood and kind of deal with modifying some of that, then yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that's a good read on that. I thought that was pretty important. It's funny that you bring that up, and we were talking RVs, and that's really kind of where it came from too. Is the fact that I'm just surprised. I mean, where are we going with that? But you've got your smaller pickup trucks like the Ranger that is really hitting the market now, and that I can see. I can see.
Sure.
And I think you'll get better performance out of it. It's a lot less gross vehicle weight.
The occasional need to haul some lumber home from the hardware store or the lumber yard. Fine, that's a great use for a smaller, the Chevy Colorado or the Ford Ranger or whatever the GM.
Toyota Tacoma.
Yeah, whatever, man. Yeah.
Nissan,
or you want to rooftop camp, or you want to go off road. Yeah. Sure, absolutely. But that's not a tow vehicle, right? It's not.
Nope.
All right, so I got one here. So So along the lines of, we've spent a fair amount of time talking about infotainment systems in cars and kind of the push that all these manufacturers are making toward. I mean, we were kind of just alluding to this a while ago, like a Mustang on the outside only. People tend to be more focused on kind of the tech than they are the engine, right? So
it's obvious, yeah.
Yeah, so Google had their big developers conference this week. Apple has one coming up. They all do it typically around summertime. And Google announced basically an upgraded, a big change in the UI, which means user interface of Android Auto. Right. So that's their car. If you buy, like Toyota just announced that they're going, I think 100% Android Auto, and they have some that are Apple CarPlay also.
Right.
If you buy a vehicle, it's the native interface made to work with your smartphone. What that means is, if it's Apple CarPlay, Apple designs that interface, and it's supposed to be similar to what you see on your iPhone, in your Toyota or your Honda or your Ford.
And it's a very familiar working environment for you if you have an iPhone and you have Apple. Apple Play or whatever it is,
So if you've got an Android, like Google's basically doing this, so it should be just like your phone, right? Like it's designed for ease of use, and so you're not distracted and all that. So
they already had it. It's just kind of an update. Is that right?
Yeah, they made a bunch of changes to kind of how you access
simplify
things
it
to make it easier to use, which is kind of a big deal, and I'm happy to see that because it. Look, we're all doing this. We've all got some sort of like map navigation thing going on with our phone when we're driving, or text to speech, or hands-free calling, or whatever it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Better to get that solidified in the car manufacturers from the OEM standpoint than to have to haggle things together.
Yeah, no doubt. And the one thing when I was reading about that, I saw the article as well, that the old way that you were used to seeing some of the icons, or the how it used to be, they're not like totally getting rid of that. It's still there. It's hidden. You just have to know where it's at.
Right.
Which I noticed there'll be like a bell icon. You go there and it's how it you can see it. So I think it's very well thought out. I'm interested to see when it comes out. I know they haven't really gotten too deep into it. It's a little too early. They still got a lot of legal aspects to go through because of the privacy and stuff. Because just remember, folks, Keith and I have talked about this on previous podcasts about the artificial intelligence and smartphones and the whole thing is to gather data, personal data. I mean your habits and everything. And we talked about it with insurance companies wanting to sell you a dongle to put in your car to track. All of this stuff crosses the line in some cases. So Google's not just going to put it out there without making sure that they are not legally represented well, and are following the law, the rule of the law. That's the bottom line.
I mean, you just think about it like this: like, if there was a crime, and let's say that someone saw a black truck, within a mile of your neighborhood, and you own a black truck, and it's parked outside in your driveway, and you didn't have anything to do with this crime. Well, if you are using one of those interfaces and you're using the maps feature and you're getting directions, that thing it's turn by turn. It's tracking your, and Google uses, even on your smartphone without the car interface, they use data for real-time traffic. Meaning, like, if you're on a road that's 45 miles an hour, and Google knows that, and then all of a sudden people with cell phones that are running Google Maps start going through there at 15 miles an hour, they're gonna look for that trend, and they're gonna go, well, there's a traffic pileup, right? And they then provide that information to everyone else that's using their map service and say, this is a slowdown.
They know where you're at.
So what happens then if somebody shows up and goes, well, I want a subpoena to, I want to know where you were, right? What's your alibi, right? Like, are they going to have to turn over trip information data, right, from your vehicle?
Right.
That's just stuff they got to think about.
They do have to think about that, and you can reference back to the situation where Apple would not break the phone for the one guy, ended up killing some people, man, and they wouldn't unlock the phone. I mean, because it kind of goes against what they have agreed to for all their customers, which is invasion of privacy, and it's a big deal, folks. You need to pay attention to this. Be careful what you ask for. I've said this. Keith has said this. Be careful what you ask for, because when you want convenience, sometimes you compromise privacy. Most of the time, you compromise your privacy.
I think Ben Franklin said that.
Is that right? Is
No.
that Ben? Wow,
No.
man.
No. I just made that up.
Okay. I got you.
All right, you got anything else?
I do, man. I found, and I thought you would find this one interesting. It was caught my eye. You may have heard about this one. It was out of Car and Driver. The headline was "Key fobs and garage door openers on the blink." it happened to an entire Cleveland suburb. Okay, so basically what happened is it says residents of North Olmsted, Ohio. It's a Cleveland suburb. They reported intermittent outages of the remote key fobs and the garage door openers. Okay, nothing was working.
I got a theory.
So,
I haven't read the article. I saw the headline, but I have a theory.
Yeah, and it says conspiracy theorists were quick to name check the nearby NASA Glenn Research Center or recent technical problems at Cleveland Hopkins Airport as possible sources of the disruption, but the solution, that was not the solution, okay? It was more prosaic, is what they said.
Can I take a shot at this before you reveal the... Okay. So a couple podcasts back, we talked about... Actually, this...
That's why I knew you were going here. Go ahead. I know where you're at.
It's about to air. It's episode 17, the internet. And we got into radio frequencies used by the 5G cellular network interfering with weather detection data.
Right.
All of these devices that you are naming are using RF. They're using radio frequency. If they're having problems connecting, usually that's an interference issue.
And you hit the head of the nail.
All right.
Drum roll, please. You know who solved it? The local TV repairman solved the issue. He figured it out. The problem was even more infuriating because it was erratic. The key fobs for some brands seemed immune to the effect, while others came up dead consistently.
Different radio frequencies between manufacturers.
Exactly. One victim found it affected his GMC, but not his Nissan, leading him to believe it was a domestic versus import situation, at least in terms of the affected vehicles. Okay, so the bottom line was apparently the resident, there was a resident, let's see, after utility and law enforcement officials failed to figure it out, a TV repairman armed with some testing equipment discovered a single house was emitting a particularly strong signal.
Okay. All right.
Apparently, the resident, an electronics enthusiast, had devised a wireless warning system of sorts to alert him while he was working in his basement. We don't know what he's working on down in his basement to where he needs this kind of system to let people know he's coming in. And we'll just leave that to the imagination, folks, what goes on in basements. The problem was that his signal was transmitting a 315 megahertz radio signal, one of the frequencies earmarked for, you guessed it, remote key fobs, garage door openers, and tire pressure monitoring systems, among other short-range applications. Yep. Go ahead and elaborate on that. I mean, like we said.
Well, so there's a couple things that, and I'd be curious to know if it says anything about this in the article. So technically, as consumers, you can I almost said go to Radio Shack. They don't exist anymore, but you can create your own sort of, I mean, we did it in Cub Scouts, like transistor radio. Mm-hmm. And you can make your own transmitting devices and use whatever frequency you want, but the FCC says that they have to be under a certain broadcasting strength or threshold. Right. And they usually do that in terms of watts or milliwatts, I think. Mm-hmm. And if you exceed that, like a ham radio, for example, where guys are talking to guys in other states and sometimes other countries, those have enough broadcasting power that you have to have an FCC license to do it. Okay. Right. Well, if you're broadcasting something that powerful, I would suspect A, he doesn't have a license, and B, if he applied for a license on those frequencies, they wouldn't give it to him.
Yeah, I think that the latter is the case. So out of this headline comes the question, which I felt was very interesting at the end of this thing. And I'm going to say my answer is yes to this question. Are we vulnerable to hackers like this? Because this is the stuff with equipment like this that you have to be very aware of. You know, you want secured type systems where even the best secured systems can be hacked. You know, if the individual is is adamant about hacking into your system and they know enough about how it works, they can probably get in.
Well,
unless there's several firewalls to get through before you get there. But stuff like this is easy.
You brought up a point there, and this guy, maybe it was this guy's theory, American versus domestic, and they noticed that it interfered with some of them, but it didn't interfere with others. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
right.
A while back, I mean a good while back, like maybe 5, 7, 8 years ago, there were different schools of thought on key fobs and keyless entry for cars. And traditionally the American manufacturers used an older technology, which was radio frequency, and it was similar to your garage door opener. And it just broadcasted a code on that frequency, and it unlocked the car door, just like your garage door opener broadcasts and opens your garage door. Well, people were just sitting there because it wasn't encrypted, and they would just like have a device, and they would go to mall parking lots, and they would sit there in their vehicle, and they would turn their receiver on. Remember, it's just open air transmissions. You can listen, and they were picking up people's vehicle codes, right? Well, somebody'd pull in, get out of their car, they'd lock their car, they'd go into the mall, they'd come back, and their car's, been like broken into. And in some cases stolen, but there's no signs of forced entry. Well, they were just reading the code, right? So then the cat and mouse game ensued, where now we've got to do an encryption, or we've got to do like a half-shared key thing. And that's where a lot of the European manufacturers didn't use radio signal. They used infrared, or they used something, but not radio signal. Mm-hmm. And there's pros and cons to both. Like sometimes the radio signal would travel further, meaning you could unlock your car from further away, which begs the question of why do you need to be like 50 yards away from your car when you unlock it? But I bring it to you in that case,
Tesla
right?
Owner.
But and now
Bring
it's
it
just
to you.
You
come
have
on,
it in your
come
pocket
on.
and you're within proximity. You put your hand on the door and it opens, and that's fine. But yeah, so that's how this whole thing kind of got stirred up way back.
Right, that's interesting, man. But I was thinking on the Tesla thing. Hey, Elon, let's add an additional app called Red Rover or something like that, and when you are 500
are you kidding
feet away from the vehicle, it comes to you.
So interestingly enough, and you kind of threw me a curveball here, just read this week that, and I was kind of stalling here to see if I could find it, Tesla's new enhanced summon, self-driving in parking lots.
There you go.
So you joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks,
but
if you're not a Tesla fan already, man, see how quickly Elon listens? I put that out there, and he's already got an app for it.
He was on it last week,
He was on it last week. He was reading my mind.
Or a time machine.
Yeah. Now,
this is from Electrek.
A Tesla time machine. Ooh.
Yeah. Tesla's working on a new autopilot feature called Enhanced Summon, and it enables a Tesla vehicle to drive itself to the owner in parking lots.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, now they've got how about the other piece of software that they came out with, where it will physically order your parts for your car?
Well, that's smart. That's very smart.
You saw that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So there you go. I mean, Tesla, man, I'm telling you.
Tesla pushed the feature to its early access fleet and gives us a better idea of what it actually does. It's in a beta version right now. So they may make changes before this thing ever comes out. But there are people that are beta testers that have it. It's described by Tesla as a parking assist feature that helps you bring your car toward you or toward the destination of your choice by navigating out of parking spaces and maneuvering around objects as necessary. So
now here's the question: can it? Okay, it can come to you. You can summon it, but can you tell it go fetch?
Well, that's. So I immediately started thinking valet, right? Like,
yeah. Because I mean, if you're a pregnant woman or a disabled person, somebody that needs a little assistance, from getting point A to point B, but you're in a big, huge mall. It's Christmas and people are doing last-minute shopping, but the only space is like a half a mile away. It can drop you off, go find that spot or whatever. We just opened up a whole new can of worms, Keith.
Well, and so I would bet that would be like a phase 3. So the way it reads to me right now is you can only summon it, bring it to you or to a preferred destination, but that would make a whole lot of sense to, then go and add go find your own parking spot kind of feature.
So. I think it's great, man. I love it. I love technology, man. It's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so I got one more here. Okay. This is one that's near and dear to my heart. So we were just talking about Ford trucks and all trucks,
right?
But so happy 40th birthday, Bigfoot.
Oh.
Bigfoot is apparently gonna undergo a full restoration, the original Bigfoot, which debuted in, well, it was a 1974 F-250.
Boy, we love our trucks, don't we?
But I don't think that he rolled it out until a few years later, 1979.
That makes sense because I remember seeing some of the first monster truck type shows at some of these
this
civic
is the one that
centers.
Started it all.
Yeah,
like he was in movies and he was crushing cars.
I was trying to think of the timeline. It had to be the late 70s.
Late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. He started the whole monster truck revolution. Now, as a personal connection, that was where I grew up. Like his
I didn't know that.
Headquarters used to be, they've moved it, but was on 270 outside of St. Louis in St. Louis County.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That area got kind of run down and they moved, but that's where it started. You could literally, I would drive by there as a kid and they would have the trucks parked outside and you'd just be like, wow.
Yeah, as a kid growing up, you had to be fascinated with that. Yeah.
Yeah, man, they were huge.
That's a big toy, man, Yeah. That's the stuff you're in the yard, making tracks and stuff with your Matchbox and that's cool. That's great. That's awesome.
And then they rolled through 3 or 4 or 5 of them after that in pretty rapid succession. So Bob Chandler's the guy that started it.
Yeah.
Started as a personal project by a Missourian named Bob Chandler, who turned the weekend off-roader into a nationwide phenomenon. This is from The Drive. So 5 of the most memorable Bigfoot moments. So after he created it, 2 years later, to prove the capabilities of his Ford, which now rode on 48-inch tires, he organized a stunt that involved trampling 2 dilapidated cars in a field, videotaping it for others to see.
Yep.
And of course, the rest is history.
The rest is history. And what they do these days in those monster trucks is just mind-boggling. Those guys' awareness of where they're at all times when they're operating those things, it's like they're a fighter jet pilot.
Yep.
Because they have to know, where everything is at all times in order to get those things to stand on their noses while they're skirting it backwards on two front tires. It's amazing. It's such a lot of fun. So,
looks like they are restoring. It's actually done. The original 74 F-250 has been restored.
Wow.
The restoration is being documented on Power Nation's YouTube channel, and you can see the first episode in the Bigfoot Rebuild Chronicles below. Okay.
Yep.
Now, before you go to Power Nation's YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button on ours.
Yeah. Absolutely. Please do that. Yeah.
And then go check it out.
Yeah.
Help us get to our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening to this podcast on Android or Apple, just know that there's a video version on YouTube as well. And to those of you that have already subscribed, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Please tell a friend.
We're growing every day.
Yeah.
Growing every day. I've been monitoring that. And
literally.
Thank you guys, all of you who have subscribed already, and keep it going. Yeah. So let's just run down the list. They can hear us on Apple, iTunes,
I think it's called Apple Podcast now.
Right, Apple Podcast. Just go to apple.com, iTunes, Apple Podcast. We're Parts Counter Gurus Podcast. You can search Parts Counter Guru. You get right to us. Stitcher.com. Parts Counter Gurus is there. Search on Parts Counter Gurus. Google Play. Just go to playgoogle.com.
Google Podcasts.
Google Podcasts. Parts Counter Gurus Podcast. All that stuff, man. But we really, where we want you to listen any way is suitable for you that meets your needs to listen to what we have to say. But YouTube subscribing there definitely helps us keep things going. So we'll go through some of the other stuff.
I'll give you one more. In fact, I'll do it for you.
Okay.
If you turn your speakers up a little bit and watch this. Hey Alexa, play Parts Counter Gurus podcast. And she'll do it.
Ooh.
Well, I don't have it. Yeah, but if you have an Amazon Echo,
I kept waiting
her to
tell
play
me.
it. Yeah, well, there isn't one in the room, but yeah, if
awesome.
If anybody had one close to them and they're playing that, this podcast it'll do it.
Right on. Cool.
So we're on for sure we're on the Amazon Echo line of devices, and I believe we're also on the Apple HomePod series as well.
Yeah. So I don't have either of those yet. I live in a condo, man, and this thing's listening all the time. It'd be kind of hard to get in another room without somebody listening. So anyway, we'll see. Right. I just don't need it as of yet. So put it that way. So well, cool.
All right. So lawnmowers.
All right, lawnmowers. Let's talk lawnmowers.
So from monster trucks to lawnmowers. Here we go.
Yeah. Love it,
man. So I got a whole lot of stuff. I got some questions for you.
Well, I hope I can answer those. If not, we'll bring it back.
I've got some experience to share. If you're in the market for a new lawn maintenance piece of equipment, there's been some interesting changes in the past 3 or 4 years for sure. We'll get into that a little bit, but do you have any first, where do you want to start this?
Well, choosing the right lawnmower.
All right.
And I will say this is one of those product offerings out there that you definitely get what you pay for, and you also, this is probably one of the most abused pieces of equipment around your house,
right?
For lack of maintenance. People
don't change the oil.
They don't change the
oil.
They don't pay attention to it. They don't do.
They don't clean the air filter. They don't replace the spark plugs.
They never sharpen the blades. I mean, this is. So, I could go on for hours about how to choose the right one, but you got to understand, how big is your yard? Is it a flat?
Yeah. Okay.
How big is your yard? So let's go there.
So and by the way, if you're not servicing your mower, first of all, you can go into like the big box department stores and they will sell you a kit that's got the oil and the spark plug. It's one spark plug usually if it's a push mower or a walk behind,
right?
And an air filter, and you do that.
Do that.
There's
every
no
season.
better excuse to have an adult beverage,
right? That's
on
exactly
a Saturday
right,
afternoon, than that. Okay,
here's
you ought to be changing it every weekend at that rate,
exactly,
right?
Man. Yes.
And it's not that it's less than $20 for the whole kit.
It's cheap, and the thing runs so efficiently. But in order for you to get the maximum service, and when I say service, what you were shooting for is a well manicured lawn, cut well. You're not killing the yard. All this stuff has a lot to do with it, because if you're not getting the maximum amount of efficient power, if the blade is not sharp enough and you got a mulching blade on there and it's not cutting the clippings, the right size, there's so many things that can go wrong with that. And I get it, because I'm guilty of it, that it's hard to pay attention to I know people that buy a new lawnmower every year because they just abuse them, man.
So typically, if you have like Bermuda, you can cut them shorter. But if you have like a bluegrass or a fescue or something, you want to cut it taller, 3 inches usually.
Yeah.
So let's get in. So I had to go back and look some of this up before the podcast, but I put an irrigation system in. I did it myself because I'm weird like that. About 10 years ago, And part of that process was measuring the amount of space, how big is my lawn, you know, and knowing, because those sprinklers have coverage ranges, and you have to know how many sprinklers to put and all. So I measured my lawn. It's not hard.
No, it's referenced in square feet.
But if you're looking at, and where this particularly comes into play, I think, is the electrics or the rechargeables. If you've got a gas mower, it's less of an issue. But if you're looking into the electrics or the rechargeables, it's a bigger factor. And so you need to measure your lawn. Well, how do we do that? So you want to get a tape measure out, and just literally, you might have to, put a little stick down and measure it, and then come back and, go to your stick and measure it the rest of the way if your tape measure is not long enough.
Right.
But you're looking for length times width, right? Or length and width, okay? And, whatever it is, if it's, let's say, 30 or 40 feet by 100 feet, right? And those two together give you the square footage. So when you multiply, here we go. When you multiply the length times the width, that's going to give you the square footage of your lawn.
Right.
In feet.
This applies to, measuring a room in a house. I mean, that's square footage.
No difference. It's just bigger.
Right. It's the same thing. And that's going to help you, to determine, like, if you're doing your own fertilizing and stuff, too, that's going to help you there.
You got to know that anyway.
Know the coverage.
For coverage.
Yep.
So it's just good to know. It doesn't take long. Go get a tape measure and do it. Now, when you start looking at a lot of the, like, rechargeables and the cordless stuff, they do it based on acreage, not square footage. Right. And I think they're doing that intentionally because they don't want you to know. These things actually don't have a very big range.
Right.
If you have a medium-sized or a large lawn, they're not going to do it in one charge. But, and we'll put this on the Mentioned on a Podcast tab on our website, I found a handy little calculator. We'll link to it, and it converts acreage to square feet or square feet to acreage.
That's perfect, man.
1 acre is, Jay, do you know how in square feet?
Nope.
Okay.
You give it to me.
One acre is 43,560 square feet.
That's a lot of feet.
So it is. So, now most of these electrics or these rechargeables tell you that they'll cover anywhere from a quarter to a half acre.
Right.
So 20,000 square feet. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason that there's a quarter to a half is because depends on how much resistance, how tall your grass is, how hard that thing has to work.
Right.
So it's going to vary based on that.
Typically how they rate these things, Keith, is, small, medium, and large. What's your job, small, medium, and large, and anything under 350 up to about 350, 400 square feet, which is not very big. That's pretty small. That's a small lawn. That's considered a small lawn. A medium-sized lawn would be 400 to, say, 1,000, and then a large would be 1,000 and more. Up to the acreage that you're talking about. So that plays into what type of a mower do I want.
Yeah, and a lot of homes and neighborhoods have a front lawn and a back lawn, right? In front of the house and behind the house, curbside and private side. Yep. So you got to, add both those numbers together. Either that, or you can't mow both of them in the same charge. So the advantage to the electrics, that's definitely a disadvantage, is that they just can't cover as much. One of the advantages are they're quieter and they're pretty cheap. Like compared to a gasoline mower, they typically cost about a third less.
Right.
For something comparable.
And over the long term, too, because you're not buying gas, you're
recharging batteries.
You're not buying,
Now that's a good point. So these lithium, most of them are lithium batteries.
Right.
You're going to expect to get a couple years out of them. Lithium really does not like to sit, and if you have long winters,
it likes
that's
cycles.
going to affect the longevity, how long that battery is going to last over time.
Right.
The best thing to do for a lithium battery, if you got to store it, is to store it at 50%.
That's good.
And I just know that from years of RC and drone days and all that. But 50% if you got to store it for more than like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You can expect to get about 2 years out of those batteries. So if you're going to look at an electric, look at the price of the batteries.
Yes.
Before you buy the mower. Know what that's going to cost and expect that you're going to spend that every couple of years.
Yep. And a lot of them, as a package deal, sometimes they will, you've got these manufacturers that will have a system that all works together where you have a mower, a weed eater, and a blower that utilize the same system.
Swap the batteries out, so you can have kind of one hanging on the charger, and then
you grow the arsenal, if you will, of things to use in your lawn. And I actually used the weed eater and the blower, and had really good service out of both of those pieces of equipment with the batteries. It worked great.
I use that system so for those of you that don't know that I have an RV, welcome to the podcast. RVs are all about weight, right? Like you don't want to carry, a 300-pound table, and you want to try to keep what you're hauling around with you light. So for that reason, I went out and bought a blower to blow, because you got to blow off kind of like the front, your little patio area outside, and a cordless drill. So if I've got a garage in my RV if I'm doing any work. A light like a picnic table lantern for nighttime. An inflator for the pool toys. All of those things run on the same batteries, because the batteries are the heaviest part. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
So I'm just carrying 2 batteries, and then I can just change out all that stuff in the RV just whenever. Oh, I've got a vacuum, like the vacuum cleaner inside, like same batteries.
Yeah. And don't let
easier.
Don't let the weight of the actual piece of equipment fool you. When you pick them up and say, oh God, that's really light. Well, that's by design. And they're using these composite materials, these plastics and everything that are very, very strong and very, very durable. So, and if anyone can beat something up while performing lawn maintenance, man, it's me. And like I said, don't be afraid of something that's electric, especially if you have a small yard. I mean, it's just
small yards.
Small yards are great,
Brand wise, the iRobot Terra that we talked about in a previous podcast, that is not out yet unless you live in Germany.
And I have a something to add to the iRobot. You want to get into the robotic styles?
Well, no, they're just accepting beta applications in the United States, but right now there is not. The Roomba people don't have a lawn mowing robot. They have one in beta, but it's not. You can't buy it.
They don't
as of now.
But you've got manufacturers like Husqvarna and.
You want to talk a little bit about brands, because on the rechargeables, Husqvarna is one of the top brands that the name keeps coming up, and then Greenworks, which Amazon loves.
Yeah. Steel. Yeah.
Well, they've been
Steel
making
is another
power equipment forever.
Yeah, and we'll and by the way, while we're on the subject of power equipment, for everybody that's been listening to the podcast, you know this, but if you missed it or whatever, but for those of you who are just joining us, if you go to our website, which is www.partscounterguru.com, there is a link to Amazon there, and also we also have a mentioned on the podcast tab. So any product that we may mention here, you can go to our website and purchase. Click through our website and go to Amazon, and we encourage you to do that. It helps us out. And you can place your order. There's complete anonymity. We don't know anything other than the fact that you're helping us out, man, by just making that purchase. We have an agreement with Amazon. That's about all we need to say, right?
Yep. And it doesn't even have to be automotive based. I mean, from
you can
from
buy
car
Christmas
horns,
decorations,
from car horns to toilet paper. You just go get you one. All right, so Husqvarna, we mentioned Greenworks, Steel. If you're gonna get into the gasoline stuff, and if you've got more than about a quarter acre or a half acre total, probably gas would be the way to go.
For sure.
I have been. Go ahead.
For sure, and I want to bring up something before we get into this. Engines.
Okay, I was okay.
Okay.
Yep.
The engines on these things, we mentioned it initially, so go from there. You know where I was going.
I have been a fan of the Honda equipment for a long time in terms of the walk behind. Now, they call them walk behinds. We used to call them push mowers, but the self-propelled stuff is kind of that's what they call walk behinds.
Yeah, they even have all-wheel drives now out there.
Right,
yeah.
And honestly, it's for not much more money, it's the way to go.
Yes, it is.
The Honda stuff I have had has just been bulletproof for many, many, many years. I've also got a John Deere riding mower that I sort of inherited from the family that's vintage. Like it's like late 80s, early 90s that I've sort of maintained as a hobby.
Right.
It's got a Kawasaki engine in it. So here, I guess the first thing that I want to say about buying a gasoline mower. Don't look at the name of the brand on the sticker and assume that's who makes the engine. Right. Now, if it's a Honda, Honda does make their own engine.
Honda is Honda. That is correct. Yes.
I think Toro makes their own. But, John Deere on the smaller stuff, they don't typically make their own engines. The Snapper stuff, all that stuff. You just need to know who the engine manufacturer is before you buy and do your research on them. And if you have gotten to the point where you are at the dealership asking questions about quality, you've waited too late. You need to do that homework before that sales guy gets a hold of you, because they're going to sell you what they got every time.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And you said it about, for example, like the Craftsman brand,
which Lowe's owns now, I guess, right?
Yes, there's been a lot of changing of hands, and I've watched that whole Sears thing for years because I used to work with a company that they took controlling interest over, and I sold their tools and that sort of stuff at one time. But Craftsman is, you look at their offering. Craftsman is the brand. It's the badge. It's not necessarily the engine. You'll see a lot of Briggs being used. I mean, Tecumseh's not even. I mean, are they even still around? I don't. They're not readily
only
available.
in the bigger stuff. I'm not sure.
But Briggs is commonly seen for your smaller horsepower units. When you start, also some of the rider mowers as well, though. Some of those riders will have a Briggs on
Briggs
them.
and Stratton is not the solid name brand they used to be.
No, they're not.
And to be honest, a lot of the Japanese motor, the small engine manufacturers have kind of cornered that, in being bulletproof.
Honda.
Here's the thing with Honda. So let's just get into Honda particularly for a little bit. Honda has gotten into, and I own one of these that I bought about 3 years ago. On their walk-behinds, they're using what they call composite decks. They're plastic decks. Now, the mower deck is the actual part that used to be metal that the engine sits on, that it has wheels attached to it, and that's the part that when you look at it that you see that's sort of bowl-shaped or flat-shaped. This is really, really thick plastic, and they put a lifetime warranty on it, and I've heard a lot of people go, well, these Hondas, now they're putting these cheap plastic mower decks on and not worth anything. So here's why they're doing it, and I can attest to this. I owned one that I had for about 10, 12 years, and the deck started to rust out, and the engine was fine. It was running great. Yeah. But because grass traps moisture, and you get that moisture trapped up under the mower deck, and you've got to kind of... and if you don't clean it out every time you use it, that moisture is going to rust it out. And literally, I got to the point where the deck was rusting through and the motor was fine. And I went, well, this sucks, because now I can't, I got to just buy a new one. So the composite decks, you won't have that problem. They'll outlast and you should, you take care of these Honda mowers, man. You'll get 10 years out of them. Easily.
Yeah, one of the main reasons, though, for clearing the deck, and you should do this quite often, actually, keeping that clear, is because the way these things are designed, to put it in perspective, just like a NASCAR stock car, okay, they're aerodynamically designed for airflow around this thing, for flow around this thing, to get so it's efficient, it's going where it's supposed to go, it's staying on the ground. All these things are very important. Same with a lawnmower. I mean, as simple as a piece of equipment that is, that deck design, the underneath, it's designed to force in combination with the blade, if it's a mulcher, to force those blades down, or those blades of grass down, and chop them up several times to make them really fine. And if you don't clean your deck underneath off, it gets trapped and it sticks, and so it's not getting the right. It's not working right. But also it leads to the rusting and the failure of the deck if it's not composite, if it's a metal one. So. You got to keep these things clean.
I'm going to suggest for the drive mechanisms as well. It's another reason to clean them. But if you've got bigger than a quarter acre, you really need to be looking at like a self-propelled or a walk-behind. I don't care how fit you are. I don't care how strong you are. It's just like, it's just going to make your life so much easier.
Yeah. Well, I owned a self-propelled once in my life. And
ooh, is this something we differ in opinion on?
I'm just not a big, me personally, I'm not a big fan of it because I feel like I lose some sort of control of that. Getting into places
I feel like it's easier because I don't have to muscle up now and worry about lifting the deck up and having it shoot debris at me. And
I guess I'm old school because when I shop for mowers, man, I know the size that I need going in. I know what type I want going in. I want a mulcher that also has an option for a rear bag.
Yeah.
I want a big cut width.
Mulcher is the way to go, by the way, because if you treat your lawn at all with fertilizer, bagging your grass and throwing it away is taking the nutrients out of your lawn. Mulch it and put the nutrients right back down into the soil.
That's exactly right. And if your mulcher mower is working properly with a clean deck, then it should chop those things up pretty finely, and it will degrade pretty quickly. So, but yeah, man, I'm like, lawnmowers for me are like underwear. I go in, I know what I'm getting because it's been working all these years, and I'm walking out with what I wanted. Period.
Things just got weird on the podcast, but yeah. So I am a fan of the self-propelled. Now, just you should know, Jay, that they've gotten pretty good with. I mean, it's just like self-driving cars.
They have.
I mean, you let go of that thing and it stops, and you can still push them.
Right. The transmissions are designed to disengage because you don't want people getting hurt, falling over, and the thing's still rolling and mow over your foot,
a lawn that's not on a level lot, or you have a lot of debris on like roots, right, that you have to cut over from trees. Get the big rear wheels. Those make your turning so much easier.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because the larger wheels on the back end are just perfect for that. Yep. It's like going from, to kind of put it into perspective of our listeners, it's like going from a Sportster up to a Dynaglide.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Little Harley reference for you there,
from rough to to a Cadillac, basically. So,
well, look, even Bigfoot needs big wheels to climb over obstacles. So.
That's absolutely right.
All right, so there's this. Go ahead.
So then
we're both fired up on this lawn topic thing. Go ahead.
We are, but so that's that's those types of mowers. I mean, were you going to go into the? How much more did you want to spend on the robotics?
You got something? Let's talk about it.
Well, how does that work? Okay, because you set the parameters up. The perimeter, you have a wire or whatever. Isn't that right? You
no,
set the boundaries
actually. Well, okay. So nobody's really standardized on this yet. Okay, so everything that's out right now for us in the United States is kind of first gen. You're an early adopter. Everybody's going to have their own way of doing it. So the prevailing wisdom right now, and this is iRobot's looking to do it this way, and a couple of the other ones are as well. It maps the lawn. So now a lot of times that's with an app. Some of them have GPS chipsets in them and a Wi-Fi card. And it's literally memorizing your lawn based on, like, you may have to go out and set that the first time you use it, or you may have to drive it with your smartphone or your tablet the first time you mow the lawn. And then it remembers that mapping each successive time that you mow. So it's automated from then on. Right.
Yeah, and the nice thing, from what I understand, and these things are heavily used in Europe, and understand why. Most folks living in Europe don't have the luxury of us in the U.S. where we have 40 acres. We just exactly. We just don't have. They just don't
Right.
have what we have as far as the amount of space to take care of. So they take a very small piece of landscape and they make these things pristine. So that's where these little robot mowers come in handy. One thing that I found out in doing my research for this podcast about the robotic or the type iRobot or robot lawnmowers, they're very expensive, by the way. I mean, I think they start in the $500 to $600 range and go on up to around $3,000, $4,000, $5,000,
Right.
depending on what it is. But like you were saying, they map out your lawn. Now take this into consideration, and this is coming out of England, is where I read this story. And it's an issue. It's an issue for users of these units. Okay, so if a bird flies down and lands in front of this thing while it's operating, it can fly away. It gets scared and it flies away. Or a squirrel's going to get freaked out and it's going to run. In England, they have a large hedgehog population. Okay, and they love their hedgehogs over in England. What's happening with them is they're actually killing a lot of hedgehogs. And here's why. A hedgehog's defense mechanism is to roll up in a ball. It doesn't run away. And it gets its quills out just like a porcupine. And instead of running away, it gets run over by the mower. It happens.
So
Husqvarna is working on this. Husqvarna is working on the technology. They haven't perfected it yet. But
sensors they've got them in the inside your home floor cleaning robots where some of them have sensors on them. So it's not too much of a leap then to think that they could develop that and apply it to an outdoor.
Yeah, it would have to be something of a touch.
Some of them use like
to
sonar.
Move away and
Yes. And some of these systems, if they're not using GPS to map the lawn, they have beacons, which is what you were talking about earlier. The problem with those is it's almost like a bat flying around in a room. You're essentially blind just looking for the pingbacks. And, if you don't have a perfectly square lawn, that could be problematic. But I thought you were going to go with. Yeah, you might. I didn't see the hedgehog thing come in. I thought there was some sort of an opportunity for a joke here about the lawnmower driving on the other side of the lawn or something like that. All right.
That's a good one. Yeah, well, it does that too, though. Only in England, though.
So the riding stuff, the ride-on stuff, right? And this is a whole. You get into like a lot of stuff here. And I think you wanted to kind of talk about Kubota a little bit and some of the engine manufacturers. If you're going to get a ride-on, go with one where it's a good quality engine. But I want to mention before we get into that, several of the manufacturers have adopted this oil in the filter thing, meaning when you change the oil, it comes in the oil filter. So you just buy the oil filter, or so you think, and you do your oil change and you're done. Okay, fine, but it's more of a marketing tactic than anything, because if you think about it, when you drain your oil, if you're not sitting on a perfectly flat surface or you're not positioned wherever your drain plug is on that mower to where you're going to get every last drop of oil out, you could end up with too much oil in the system if you're using one of these things with all the oil in the filter, or the opposite, right? You could end up with not enough, and then you're going to have to keep an extra quart around anyway to top it off.
Right.
So sort of going into this thinking you're never going to have to buy a can or a bottle of oil again is kind of a misnomer. That's not true.
Yeah, I think that, what you need to do is understand what the product is really doing, which is making it a little easier and less time consuming for you to change it out, and that's it.
If I have a traditional riding mower and I read the manual and it calls for, I'm just going to pick something, 10W40, I can go buy whatever 10W40 I want, right?
Right.
But
that's right.
If they put the oil in the filter, that reduces the number of options that I have, and most likely I have to go back to the guys that made it and buy their stuff.
There will be some sort of disclaimer that suggests that you do that. And not to say, though, that I mean, I don't work for John Deere, and I'm only going to say that being someone within this industry, that I can tell you that there are aftermarket oils out there that do comply that would be fine. So
John Deere over the years has changed, just like Kenmore, Craftsman, who makes their oil.
Sure.
I for example, have an older, as I punch the mic, an older John Deere, and their Torque Guard, or I think it's called Turf Guard now. It used to be called Torque Guard in the manual that I have. That was made by a different company. So literally the oil that I go by now that says John Deere on it is a completely different oil by a completely different company than the one that existed when that mower that I own was made. All right, so a couple good ride-on brands. Now, some of this again is going to depend on the size of the lawn that you're trying to mow, what kind of obstacles you have, what kind of turning radius you need, what the slope of your lawn is, and all those things are factors you need to look into. There tends to be a trade-off in one or the other, speed or quality. You know, if you're going to mulch it, that's a slower process. If you're going to get one of these zero-turn, Hustler Z's or whatever that just literally, it's almost like you're mowing your lawn at 40 miles an hour.
We'll call it bad boy mowers.
Those aren't the best looking lawns out there. I will tell you, they don't. What you give up in time, the quality suffers. Right, what you make up in time, I guess I should say.
Right, and you can get pretty crazy with some of these units that they use commercially. And again, most of those things, like zero turns, ride-ons, they're for commercial usage, or people who have 10 acres that need it cut in like 3 hours. That's what they're designed to cut, really large spaces in a very short amount of time.
And by the way, those commercial guys are using that same thing on your quarter-acre lawn. What kind of results you think you're going to get?
That's right.
I mean, it's not rocket science.
Yeah. You ever seen one run?
Watched one this morning at the neighbor's lawn.
Right.
He was done in 10 minutes.
And they get those rear wheels turning and spinning, and boy, they'll grind up your lawn.
Well,
too.
And
it's efficient, all right.
It looked like when he was done. Yeah. So anyway, so Kubota has come up several times.
Kubota. They
make their own engines.
You've got they do.
I know this because you told me.
Kubota, man. I mean, I've sold some valve train for those for years. You've got John Deere is another. We mentioned those earlier, and they're using some of their smaller units are using a Yanmar engine, and they're diesels.
See, now that's something else you got to think about is that diesel versus the diesel that you buy at the gas pump for your diesel car or truck. Is it the same?
Right.
Do you have to have an additive?
Well, it depends. You need to read you have to read your manual. And that's something that we hadn't gotten into. Some of the things people, what kind of oil should I use? What kind of gas should I use? Typically, most of these manufacturers, if not all of them, somewhere on the gas cap is going to tell you exactly what you need to do, just in case you don't have the manual in your back pocket or memorized, which was something I was going to ask you. You did your piece on the ethanol and gasoline, and if I'm not mistaken, most of these smaller engines, they say no E85. They don't use it.
Yeah, right? Well, so the brand new stuff, the stuff that's been past 3-4 years or so, they're more tolerant of it. And what they have done in those, a lot of it is there's an ethanol rated tubing. So all the hoses, the fuel lines that go from like the carburetor, from the gas tank to the carburetor, and then from the carburetor into the to the engine. Those are all, they're using ethanol rated tubing, and it's a certain color.
Well, they were forced to, because you can't. That's just.
But
part of the process.
I don't care. I'm not putting ethanol in it no matter what. I mean, I've got a newer Honda. Now, I've got an older John Deere that's actually got a Kawasaki engine in it that's well built. I don't do it.
Right.
There's a gas station down the road it's more expensive, but it's ethanol free, and I buy that. You're not buying a lot of this stuff, man. I mean, if it's a push mower or even a riding mower, you shouldn't be going through more than 5 or 10 gallons in a season, in a cutting season. So it's not a lot.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Now you can get additive that will remove the ethanol or lessen the effects of it. And
lessen the effects,
in a pinch.
Well, that's what you were saying about you were talking about the diesels. Same way.
All that blue DEF crap.
You need to pay attention to your manual. I will say this, that it's the ultra low sulfur diesel movement, and it was geared towards lowering the emissions. We talked about this several podcasts ago when we were talking about OBD, and ultra low sulfur diesel was originally brought in to lower emissions on highway type of equipment. Well, that's the diesel fuel that's sitting in those pumps.
Right.
When you go get your diesel, just understand that. That's why Keith was bringing up about additives. So you need to check the manual and see what they suggest. Sometimes most of those manufacturers will sell
now
the
bigger
themselves.
John Deere stuff, I know for sure. A lot of those guys have they keep a tank on their property because it's not the same stuff that you can go get at the gas pump. You got to put an additive
right,
in it.
and that's exactly right. And John Deere. Speaking of John Deere, I mean those guys get into sport turf mowers. They get into golf mowers, and so these are places that will have their own tank of diesel fuel sitting around for them to maintain those things. And that's how, if you've never seen a golf turf mower, you need to go check one out, man. Those things are interesting. It takes old technology and new technology together.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. And when I say that, cylindrical style, blades on the front, which is like the old push style. Remember those? If you had a lawn that wide and that long, then it's good.
Right.
Otherwise, you can get tired pretty quick with one of those.
So know what engine you're getting in that thing. Please, again, just don't wait to do this when you're standing there looking at the mower at the place selling it to you. I just can't. I can't even stress enough how those guys are just going to sell you what they can. You need to do your homework. Right. Drop us a note on the Ask Us a Question tab on our website if you're not sure. What are some? Do you have some other kind of brands that engine-wise that you like? Engine-wise.
Well, the Husqvarna. Steel.
Both been around forever.
Anything Kubota. John Deere. I like what John Deere's doing.
But I'm going to ask you to qualify that now. In what size? Like,
oh, you're talking the maybe 1.5 liter and smaller.
Okay.
Diesels, yeah. And then when you get down to, they're not making all of their riding mower engines. They're not making all of them, and you got to know that. And again, that's what we talked about earlier about knowing. Just because it says, John Deere green on the outside of it doesn't mean that's what's
the Kenmore
under the hood.
trick, right?
So
or the Craftsman trick, or
right. You got to be very careful there. It could be it could be a Briggs and Stratton.
Now, and we'll just to bring this. Yeah, well, again, Briggs. Depends on the size. So let's bring this full circle. This podcast full circle and talk about, again, we have different size engines going into some of these things, and we started off talking about Ford getting rid of some of their bigger engines, which is going to affect towing. Well, okay, so what are you? Right. So beyond mowing your lawn, if you use these things for anything, well, it doesn't even have to be winter based. It could be leaf pickup, or it could be you're pulling around a lawn trailer doing like you could be towing kids around for a hayride in the neighborhood.
That's exactly right. Where they have the hitch on the back and you can tow a little small wagon. You need to know
you need to think about that towing capability before you buy it, because if there's any potential at all for you to go buy some add-on pull behind equipment, you need to make sure you buy a mower that can do that, or if you want to put a plow on the front of it and use it in the wintertime or whatever. Or if you want to do it in the summertime and plow up your neighbor's yard for no reason. I mean, whatever, man. I'm just,
That's funny. Honda.
Yeah, well, Honda's, yeah. So,
I mean, we probably just named the 5 engine manufacturers out there that would be where you need to stick in that.
Yeah,
in that vein,
Toro, they rate well. Toros, especially in their push mowers or their walk behinds, have this attachment in a lot of them where you hook a garden hose up to it. It's got a garden hose fitting on it, and they encourage you to clean it off that way, which is interesting. The problem that I have with that is I don't think a lot of people are going to dry them out after they do that. They're just going to put them away wet.
Right.
I haven't seen the longevity of a Toro like I have a Honda. They don't seem to get the life expectancy, but they're rated well.
Well, again, these probably have to, lawnmowers have to be the most abused pieces of equipment from a lack of maintenance standpoint. I mean, really. And you're right. I mean, you get to, I was pretty nutty about it, man. At the end of the mow, I mean, I'm out there with a rag like I'm, washing a Corvette or something, man. I'm getting all the dirt off. I'm pulling. This is the truth. I would pull my air filter after every mow, and because
air compressor.
Foam,
just blow it out.
Well, I had the foam type filter.
Yeah.
Right. Just blow it out with a compressor, and then put it back in.
It's a very small engine. It's very susceptible to.
Yeah. It's just sucking this dust in, and so. That's why the maintenance and keeping it clean is so important.
So I think it's not, Jay. It's not the equipment that the Major League Baseball parks are using on their fields. It's what that grounds crew guy is using at his house, right?
That's right.
That's one
exactly
you need to find out. You need to find out what that guy is using at his house.
That's it.
And that's your.
That's it. It's like, you talk to technicians, like
what kind of car are you driving? What's your personal vehicle?
What kind of car are you driving, man? Yeah, that's right. That's like I had people ask me how did I conclude to get to what I'm driving. I did my homework. I've sold enough engine parts to tell you what sells and what doesn't. So
we'll put we'll put some links to some of the good walk behinds or self-propelled on the mentioned on the podcast on our website. The bigger stuff we're happy to kind of comment on. I don't think we have any direct links, but just as a reminder, anything that you're thinking about buying on Amazon, go to our website first, which is what, Jay?
www.partscounterguru.com.
And thank you. And there's a mention on the podcast tab. There's a big Amazon banner at the top right of the page. If you just click through that and then go do your shopping, doesn't change the prices of what you're going to buy at all. It just gives us the credit. Nope. You want to talk about where to find us?
Sure. Real quick before I go there, can I give maybe 8 tips on what you should do with your mower?
We now tune to the part of the podcast where Jay is about to offer 8 tips for what you should maybe do with your mower.
Thank you, man. So well done. Love the intro. No, really, seriously, read the manual. When you purchase it, read the manual or read it before then. Make sure you check your oil frequently. Make sure you change your oil as advertised, which is about every season, which is roughly 50 hours.
Yeah.
Isn't that about right?
Yeah.
About 50 hours, something like that. Make sure you clean out the undercarriage, like we said. Inspect your air filters, stuff like that. Change your plug every season, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially if it's a push mower, it's one plug.
Make sure you... Right. And if you do that, make sure that you're purchasing the spark plug that is recommended by the manufacturer. I've seen people kind of shortchange it and say, that'll work, and the damn thing started missing for some reason.
Well,
I don't know what's going on.
Some of those plugs are coded for different moisture resistance levels, and
right.
I think that reenactment of your "oh, that'll work." I think that they say it a little bit with a little bit more. Oh, that'll work. There you go.
Oh, that'll work, man. Go ahead and put that thing on in there, man. I tell you what.
So
shoot, if it don't work, man, you come back here and see me next week. We'll say you nothing.
So yeah, they do make there are differences in those plugs versus the typical automotive plugs.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And just as gasoline is your friend when you're mowing because you need it to get the job done, it can be your enemy also. You need to use stabilizer, fuel stabilizer.
Big fan of that.
At the end of every season, we spoke about this on generators, which was some very good tips there. If you're not using it, man, you need to drain the thing, get rid of the fuel goes bad, and if it's the longer it sits, the worse it is. It can deteriorate seals and gaskets,
especially with ethanol. Now,
so
what I do, and most of the mowers come with these now, so you don't have to put them on. But there's an on-off fuel cutoff. It's usually a quarter turn valve, and I do this on my dirt bikes. I do it on my lawnmowers. If I'm not going to run that thing for a while, and a while means like if it's going to sit for more than a couple weeks, when I'm done with it, I'll leave it running, and I will turn that fuel cutoff off. Now this is on the smaller mowers, and this is only for carburetors. If you have fuel injection, don't do this. It'll mess up your engine. But if you know it's a push mower and it's got a carburetor, just turn the fuel toggle off and let the thing idle until it dies, and you have essentially drained your carburetor. You've drained the fuel out of the engine.
That's right.
If it's fuel injected, it shouldn't have one of those.
Good point.
But I don't know of too many small mowers that are fuel injected. Right.
They're out there, but not many. Isn't Honda one of those
not
that
mine.
have fuel injected mowers? Not yours?
Read your manual.
Trying to think. Yeah. All right. So where do we want to find us?
Yeah, you got it.
You want me to go
Keep
for
rolling.
this? Am I right? Okay. All right. So, all right.
Do you need another? Do you need another
YouTube?
warm up?
No, man. I'm good. Thank you, man. But you got to give me the.
Oh, you want the hit after it? Yeah, I don't have that. There is no. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I need the ride, man. That's what. Anyway, so so you can get us on YouTube. You just search for Parts Counter Gurus. It's there. That's our YouTube channel. We want you to go there and subscribe. Please subscribe. We need your support, and you can reach us through our website, which is partscounterguru.com. We have a link right to it. We also have a link to the podcast tab up at the top of the website, where you can find us, find links for iTunes or Apple Podcast. We're on Stitcher.com, Google Play, Google Podcasts. Where else?
Tune in.
There was another one. Tune in. That's it. That's one I don't have.
Sure.
They keep coming out of the woodwork with all these
just go to
platforms
the
you can use.
podcast links tab on our website, and they're all there.
Yep, and everything is there. They're all there. You just click on the icons. Yeah, we've got a few other tabs up top though too. We've got a sponsor us tab. What that's for is like if your company has a presence in the automotive field, engines, to do with engines, racing, repair, whatever. Just drop us a line there. Consider discussing with us what you would like from us to mention your company on our podcast or whatever, or somewhere. Add a link to your company website or whatever. That would be great. We got an Ask Us a Question tab where you can stump Keith or me. You're probably more apt to stump me than you would Keith, but you never know. If you got a parts question or you need help solving an engine problem or whatever like that, just drop us a line. There's a tab there to do that. Become a fan, man. You got what? We've got it set up to where you can become a fan. We'll notify you with upcoming important
live events,
and stuff like that.
Breaking, anything that we're working on that we want to press release is basically what that's for.
Yeah.
Inside information.
We'll send you emails. Yeah, we'll send you emails, but we're not going to go crazy on it. But yeah, it's help us and reach us and help us. and we'll help you.
It's good.
How do you like that?
It's good.
It's good, man. I just feel like there's so much more I can.
I don't know.
do.
I think we've practically reached the end of the internet
man.
with this one.
Oh, there's got to be some other platform or some other way that we can reach.
Probably
these people,
by
man.
next week there will be.
You don't think so? I think we should get our own satellite, man. That's what we should do.
Not a bad, but then you got to watch out for like people in
Our
other
own
countries
channel.
shooting it down, and it's dicey. It's dicey.
Yeah. Do they? Yeah. Well, we're going to be, as the technology rolls out, Keith's on top of it, and we're going to continue to roll out on any platform that's available to us. It will help you.
Yeah.
Help you
There
hear
you go.
us.
All right.
So-
You good? All right. Thanks everybody
good,
for
man.
watching.
Thanks,
Until
man.
next time, for those of you that think it's always important to be first, I want you to remember this. The second mouse gets the cheese. Until next time.
True. This is true. Oh, that'll work, man. You go ahead and put that thing on in there, man. I tell you what. Shoot, if it don't work, man, you come back here and see me next week. We'll say another.